We basically sat and watched our water system run out of water for the first day.
It kind of breaks your heart a little bit.
We had to abandon ship. There's nothing we could do.
I started kind of maybe, at the time I felt like I might be over preparing, but I went to the grocery store, and so that my guys, we're a 24/7 facility, so we've always got to have somebody here. So I went and kind of got some supplies so that if they got trapped in here or we had to stay here, we would have food and drinks and things like that. I called and got our generators for the facility, our pump station and all that topped off so that we had diesel fuel for all our generators. Made sure all of our chainsaws were sharpened and fueled up and loaded in vehicles.
The days before the storm and really any sort of natural event, our standard protocol is to prepare as much as we can, and we do that by filling up our water storage tanks out in the system. We also fill our generators fuel to anticipate any power outages. And then just kind of, preparing staff and discussing work schedules and things of that nature.
All we really did was make sure all the pumps were operational, make sure the generator was filled up in case we lose power. I don't think nobody really knew like the extent of how bad it was going to be, and unfortunately a lot of our processes are fixated, so we can't move them or do anything. So
the communications probably was the biggest challenge we had, and I don't think anybody saw that coming. At the beginning of the event, we had communication. Cell phone was good. Like I say, I was talking that morning with my operators just about all morning. Came in probably 10:30 that morning. Had conversations with different staff members, family members. Sometime during that day, cell phones started to fail, and then it was for the next few days you'd have them and you'd lose them. Mostly lost them. We didn't have internet. It kind of started failing, so you had no email communication. Our SCADA system that controls all of our pump stations, tanks, watches all those lift stations for our wastewater, our facility here. We have remote, our guys that work on those, our facilities maintenance guys, they have remote access to that. All that was gone. So we could see everything here at the plant, but we couldn't communicate that to anybody. Our guys that would go out into the field, they couldn't see those things. We couldn't communicate to them what was going on, so they could only see it when they were here at our facility.
One of our water intakes on the Mills River temporarily, it was flooded, so it was underwater. We had to turn the electrical system off to it to prevent any sort of damage that would have occurred from flooding. So that intake was offline for about 30 hours. So once the flooding was restored, we were able to bring that intake back online, which that intake makes up about half or a little more than half of our raw water supply. So when it was down, we weren't able to produce the amount of water that we needed to. Meanwhile, in the rest of the system, we had water main breaks throughout the system. There were at least 5 or 6 pretty large main breaks that we had difficulty accessing and isolating initially. So we basically sat and watched our water system run out of water for the first day until we could get that intake back online and kind of start isolating those leaks.
The treatment plant itself was not damaged from Helene, thankfully, other than some light flooding and some different pits and things that we pumped out. But we were able, because of those dams holding up and giving us water, we were able to keep the plant running, so we never lost the plant, which is a really big deal, because had we lost it, it had to lock it down and stop it. That would have been a problem. Once we got flow back up, we would have had a major problem with the facility. We would not have been able to treat water and trying to get it back online. So we maintained flow because those dams that were over 100 years old functioned through that. We're at a place that we've never been in the history of our water system. We got 2 5-million-gallon finished water reservoirs off of Armstrong Avenue we call Ewart Hills, and that's never been empty.
flood waters were coming in, right? So we have like an influent pit that our wells comes into the city sewer, and the pit started to flood over. Water started to go into buildings, and there was nothing we could do. So like the plant was essentially getting inundated. So we just had to, make the decision that, hey, turn off what we can turn off, and let's get out of here and come back and assess. You leave, and I had an idea of what was going on, but we didn't. Coming back and just seeing all the mess, right? We had a pump station that's 38 feet deep, and it was completely full of water. So like pump, electrical, I think inside of our main pump station, water got 8 feet above the ground level when we walked in. So it was pretty tragic, and just all the debris and the mess. So it was pretty tragic, honestly.
The day of the storm is when we had water leaks all over the system. Really couldn't locate them based on just the condition of the roads and the flooding, and some of the leaks were underwater, so you couldn't find them. But we made a decision to intentionally turn off water to about, I'd say, 20,000 people roughly in the exterior parts of our water system in an attempt to maintain service for the greater system and the more developed parts of the system where there were more critical facilities such as hospitals. But that was a difficult decision to make.
How quickly things were changing in this event. You thought you had a handle on everything, and then it wasn't the same, and just trying to deal with the staff, making sure the staff and their families were okay, and balancing that out with meeting the needs of the utility, and trying to be compassionate and functional, and not going one way too much or the other too much. When you got everything coming in here and you're trying to make all the right decisions, because you realize that the decisions you're making is impacting thousands of people, and you're trying to make sure that you're giving good information to the people around you, because you realize how unsafe some of these conditions are, because you're sending people out to work on things and you're giving them the best information you have. And like we were talking before earlier, I think, the communications were, you're sending crews out and you're looking at a SCADA system here at this facility, and you're saying, you guys need to go to this place and do this and this, and midstream they may be on their way there, and everything changes on that, and you now cannot stop them or say you need to stop and go here instead of there. So there was a lot of challenges.
Again, during that day or two after the storm, the water system status was equivalent to trying to fill a bucket that had too many holes in it, and you could not fill the bucket as quickly as we were losing water. And that, it just takes time to get around and kind of fill those holes and isolate those holes to be able to regain the water in the system.
Came together really well. It was challenging because our guys are used to having this facility to themselves and working at their own pace and doing things a certain way, and then all of a sudden here we had 30 or so people here now.
Long hours. I think we came together better as a team, because we're kind of separated, right? First shift is first shift, second shift, so everybody kind of worked together, do what they needed to be done. I worked, 12, 16-hour days, so I think it was really good to see all that. So they came together very well.
The Wilmington, Cape Fear Public Utility, 5 utility folks came up and worked with us for several weeks, restoring some of our flooded pump stations and electrical equipment. Their assistance really helped us, took some workload off of us, and helped us establish service much quicker. Really do appreciate the service that they did provide for us.
Billy Clark was there like the next day, essentially, with the generators on the truck, like 100 kilowatt generators. You guys, can we assist you in any way? So I think the moment I'll never forget is Tuesday. I think Zach Tremble from McKim & Creed and Robert Murphy from Turner Murphy Construction. I had a team of help show up, and that was the moment I was like, I felt like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. So
we couldn't access the dams and the reservoirs for several weeks. The Forest Service, they brought people in from different parts of the country to cut their way in so we could even access them. One of the roadways had sustained kind of damage so that we could only get around with UTVs. We couldn't even drive our pickup trucks to it.
Our water sewer staff and GIS staff, the days after the storm, created an online web map, which was a really effective way for our customers to know exactly what status their water was in, whether it was safe to drink or not, or even if they had water. It's very complicated based on our water system, and then what was going on who had water and who did not. So we did create this online web map, which was very successful in properly conveying that message to our customers, and also the community for just kind of understanding, the level of the event, how extreme it was, and understanding that the restoration does take time, and kind of showing a little bit of grace in that aspect.
Or I think that was something I was appreciative of and amazed at, is how patient they were and how appreciative they were that, hey, you're trying to help me, and we're a community and we're going to get through this together.
11 days to get operational from the time we went down. It took us 11 days, and that's limping, that's bypass pumping, but it took us about 11 days to get back operational.
The biggest lesson that we learned, and I learned from the storm, was to have, mostly in communications, to have backup systems. I think we've become far too reliant on cell phones and internet. We rely on those systems for our day-to-day operations, which is fine. However, we need to establish backup systems and be familiar with those systems, so in the event of in a future event, we're able to respond in a better way.
It's just to kind of be a little better prepared, trying to be a little more resilient. Unfortunately, I think like some of the lessons we learned is we're going to be in the process of possibly going through an upgrade in a few years, is to maybe move stuff higher, okay, where you don't think it could be, let's kind of move stuff over here now because we know this can flood. So I think just tend to be a little more resilient.
And you've worked hard on those things. To see them damaged, it kind of breaks your heart a little bit, because if you know what you've done over the past years to try to get it to where it was, and to see it damaged is kind of heartbreaking, because you buy into it, you feel like it's part of you. But then you realize what you're going to have to do to get it back, and you realize all the people that's impacted if it doesn't work right. So if you care about what you do, it kind of hurts you a little bit. But you see the how it helps people too, and it makes you glad that you work and do what you do for a living.
Most proud of, I think, first of all, our staff. Overall, again, the dedication that was and knowledge that our staff brings to the system. We couldn't have done what we did without them. But second, most proud of how Hendersonville, which includes utility staff and council members and the community. A lot of the reasons why our system was so successful in the restoration of services after the storm was due to the work that we've been doing for decades, making the investments in the utility system, building those resilient systems. And it's not cheap to make these upgrades, but the value that Hendersonville has in its water and utility system is something that a lot of forethought was put into that, and I don't know if that's the same everywhere, but again, that investment in infrastructure is a very important thing, and Hendersonville's been doing that for a very long time.